So good day everyone. My name is Alrose P. Rivera under the Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Biological Science at the University of Mindanao. And my report is all about plurality method of voting, which is divided into sections. The section 1 is the methods of voting and the section 2 is the weighted voting. So what is plurality method of voting? So plurality method of voting is an electoral system in which candidate or candidates who pool more than any other counterpart that is receive a plurality are elected. It means in a framework in view of single part locale, it chooses only one part for every region and might be called as a first past the post or FPTP. Single decision casting a ballot straightforward to the majority. There is also a framework in view of multi-seat regions, which chooses numerous competitors in a locale, and it might be alluded to as champ brings home all the glory alliance, casting a ballot or majority black casting a ballot. So now let's go to the methods of voting. So what are the methods of voting? Methods of voting are divided into three parts: the regular methods, the recorded vote, and the balloting. Now in the regular methods, there are three votes: the voice vote, the rising vote, and show of hands. In a recorded vote, there is only one, and that was signed ballot. Now the balloting has four. The first one is repeated balloting, preferential balloting, cumulative voting, and runoff. Now let's go to the first regular methods, and that was voice vote. According to Robert Rules of Order or RONR, voice vote, also known as viva voce, the usual method of voting on any motion that does not require more than a majority for its adoption. It is considered the simplest and quickest voting method, which is used by deliberative assemblies. For example, there is a chair for the assembly. They are going to ask for who is in favor of this candidate and motion to indicate verbally, like A or yes, and ask the opposite motion to indicate no. It will then estimate which side has more members. The second regular method, and that is the rising vote. A vote in which the voters on each side rise in turn to be counted. Rising vote is considered as the normal method of voting, requiring a 2/3 votes for adoption. For example, the number of members voting on each side rise to their feet. Last regular methods, and that was the show of hands, in which people put a hand in the air in turn to be counted. This means this is to indicate that they want something or agree with something. For example, who wants a piece of cake? Let me see a show of hands. Now let's go to the second part of the methods of voting. The second part is the recorded vote. It can be taken by recording for those member of assembly is against the vote. The signed ballot, used as a substitute for a roll call. It permits the individual's vote to be kept in a minute without the seat calling the names of every part separately. The last part of their methods of voting, and that was balloting. Balloting is a type of casting a ballot in which the mystery of the part's decision is wanted. The first balloting is the repeated balloting. It is done when no applicant accomplishes a larger part vote. For this situation, no applicants are automatically disposed of. This permits a surprisingly strong contender or compromise applicant who got not many votes in the frame of mind round to turn into the other competitor that restricting groups consent to settle on. For example, in the 1855 to 56 election for Speaker of the House, the chamber had been deadlocked for 129 ballots. Nathaniel P. Banks received the most votes, or 103 votes out of 214, and was elected as a speaker. Now let's go to the second balloting, and that is a preferential balloting. It permits an individual to decide on more than each position or competitor in turn and rank the different choices arranged by inclination. So this might be an example of the preferential balloting. Rank any number of options in order of preference. So you are going to put your first choice, the second choice, and the third choice. Now, cumulative voting. It permits individual to make more than one choice for an up-and-comer. By planning exertion in deciding in favor of just a single competitor is an individual from the gathering as a minority individual from the board. For example, John owns 1,000 shares in ABC company, and each shares entitles him to one vote. Under cumulative voting, John can vote the total of 5,000 votes for any director he likes. Last balloting is the runoffs, a point at which a second round of casting a ballot is held where the most minimal vote getting competitors or everything except two up-and-comers are killed after the first round. The chosen one is in most reduced spot might end up being a surprisingly strong candidate on whom all groups might like to concur. This is an example of a runoff. Yan. If no candidates gets more than 50% of the vote, the count goes into an instant runoff. So the first example is, in this scenario, the candidate with the least amount of votes for first choice is eliminated. Candidate A is a 40%, candidate B is 20%, and the candidate C is a 40%. So candidate B is eliminated, and half of the percent of candidate B will be divided to candidate A and candidate C. Now the second part is the voters who had that candidate as their first choice will then have their vote count for the candidate they mark as their second choice. Now, the A and C candidates had 40%, but the 20% or the half of the candidate B's percent will be divided into them. But as you can see, only 5% is added into candidate A. So the candidate C is 15%. So candidate C is the most high percent. Now the process continues until one candidate gets more than 50% of the votes. So as you can see, candidate C is not. Now candidate A is the most reduced spot. So the winner would be candidate C with the 55%. That's an example of a runoff. And that was the section 1 method of voting. Now let's go to the section 2, that is a weighted voting. Now let's go to the second section, the weighted voting. In the weighted voting, there is only one part, and that is the voting power. So the voting power that an elector has might be founded on the portion of stock he or she owns rather than how many votes they have. An elector may control what might be compared to 100 votes, where different electors just control 15 or 10 less votes, depending on the electoral system. So we have here the voting power. How to find the voting power? To figure out power, we need to first define some concepts of weighted voting system. So P1, P2, and P3, and so on are called players, or the number of players. And to denote the weight of the player is the way W1, W2, and W3, and so on. Now the notation for quota is Q. The quota must be over half to the total of weights. So that is the formula. So we have here the example of a voting power, or how to find a voting power. So we have here the quota of 8 with a total weight of 5%, 4%, another 4%, another 3%, and another 2%. So the total weight would be added. So 5 plus 4 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 is equals 18. Half of 18 is 9, so the quota must be 9 less than to the quota and less than to 18. Since the quota is 8 and 8 is not more than 10 or 9, this system is not valid. Example, we have a quota of 16. Now we have the total weight of 6%, 5%, 3%, and 1%. Now this is going to be added. 6 plus 5 plus 3 and plus 1 is equals to 15. The total weight of this is 15. And half of the 15 is 7.5. So the quota must be 7.5 less than the quota and less than to 15. Since the quota is 16 and 16 is more than 15, the system is not valid. We're going to make the system valid. So here is the last or the third example. Mr. Matic has 22% ownership. Miss Pierce has 14%. And Mr. Hamilton has 9%. There is a motion to decide where best to invest their savings. The company's bylaws define the quota as 58%. What does this voting system look like? So the system voting looks like is 58, a quota of 58, and a total weighted of 30%, 25%, 22%, and 14%, and 9%. So this is going to be added again. So 30 plus 25 plus 22 plus 14 plus 9 is equals to 100. Now the half of the 100 is 50. Since the quota is 58 and 58 is more than 50, and less than 100, then the system is valid. And that would be all. Thank you.